Welcome to How's It, our podcast about bridging global cultures, celebrating the good and the bad milestones, and growing together.
Hello and welcome.
Hello.
We're back again.
We are back. We are back, baby.
Today's episode is quite a big one.
Yeah.
So it is in fact so big we're going to be splitting it into two parts.
Don't think one episode would have given the topics enough justice.
No, I don't think so either. So it is a two-parter.
Yeah.
We'll talk about friendship, and honestly, we could probably fill 20 episodes with topics about friendship. But we are going to be speaking about toxic friendships.
Yeah.
And boundary setting.
Fun times.
But before we get involved in all things toxic friendships, what has been living rent-free in your head?
Okay, so I know you're not a big reality TV watcher. I am obsessed. So I've recently finished season 2 of The Secret Life of Mormon Wives. And let me tell you, it is some of the best reality TV I've ever watched, right? They're so new to reality. So it's about these group of moms that kind of came together a couple of years ago. I think they've been going for about 4 or 5 years. And when TikTok started gaining momentum, they started this mom talk. Because they're all young. All super young, they're Mormons, live in Utah, and they slowly but surely gained popularity. Disney saw them, was like, this is a flipping TV show, mate.
There's something here.
There's something here. So season 2, and it's just so good. There's no filter because they're so new to reality TV. They say whatever. Because generally in reality TV, you have the fourth wall, which is stuff that is not said on camera.
Yeah.
But there is no fourth wall. Everything and anything goes. And I'm obsessed with them. Like, I follow them all on Instagram. It's such a good, I think, story of, funny enough, friendships. And it kind of lends itself to what we're going to be talking about. But it's so interesting to see how friendships change, how fame kind of embedded itself into this friendship group, and how certain people have changed for the good, the bad. And it's just highly recommend. Yeah, so that's all I've been thinking about. What about you?
So for me, I would say the thing that's been living rent-free in my head, or not really rent-free, but a recommendation, I suppose, has been a book that I bought.
Okay.
In fact, it just got released. It's called Not Just a Period.
Dr. Hazel.
Dr. Hazel.
Dr. Hazel's great.
I
we
love
love
Dr.
her.
Hazel.
She's amazing.
So she's used to be an NHS doctor. Now she's sort of full-time, has her own clinic. I think she's like nutrition.
Yes.
And she also focuses on women's health specifically.
That's very cool.
And Not Just a Period has come out, and it is honestly very, very interesting.
Really?
For pretty much anyone that either has a period or maybe lives with somebody with a period.
So in other words, pretty much the entire population.
Exactly. I think it
Okay.
is a book that everyone can get something out of. Given that 50% of us approximately are period havers.
Yes. Lucky us.
For at least a portion of our lives. But it also deals with when you stop getting a period and menopause.
Really,
and
that's
everything
so
in
interesting.
between. So I think very, very interesting for both people in the household.
I have one of you actually bought me The Female Factor.
Yeah,
And
that was the book before.
That was a book before. That's actually very interesting. She's got also like recipes and stuff about what to eat during your phases. She's great.
Yeah.
We'll link her bio in the episode notes. So those that if you want to follow her. But she's really good. She's just lovely. She
So
seems
lovely.
like such a nice person.
She's
as well.
Irish.
Is she
She's
Irish?
Born to be lovely.
I think she lives like Clapham Tooting side.
Yeah, I think we probably lived pretty much down the road from her back in the day.
Can you, if we ever see her.
Fangirl.
Bangle.
Love you.
Amazing.
Dr. Hazel.
Okay, and high and low of the week. What's been your high and low?
So my high and low is sort of connected.
Okay.
So I'd start with a low, which is, and I think I did mention this previously, but I've sort of effed up my knee completely. But the high that's coming off the back of that is I've had to refocus my training.
Yes.
Strength training and swimming. I'm getting
Awesome.
back into it.
Nice.
And I'm having a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Something a little bit different. I haven't like really concentrated on that sort of exercise for a while, which is my downfall.
But don't you find that also like when you start changing up your exercise routines, like I'm still doing some weights, but I've started running more. As we mentioned in the last episode, but obviously we're doing that 21k. It's like a bit more energizing.
Yeah.
Like it
it's
is a
just
bit more
something-
energizing. It's
yeah,
just something
changing
different.
things up.
Nice.
So that's
Low.
mine.
Do you have a low?
Low is my knee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which continues to plague me.
Okay.
But that's fine.
It'll be fine. Ice pack, stretches. You've got time.
Yeah, I've got a couple of
You've
months
got time.
before the marathon or half marathon. How about you? Any highs and lows?
So, being, we're obviously, we started the podcast, we're being more active on social media. My sister, funny enough, I had such a lovely chat with my sister, which was actually such a high for me because her life is so busy. We obviously chat often, but it's very rare for us to have like 20 minutes on a video call uninterrupted, and we managed to do that. So that was really lovely. But in the call, she was like, you really need to focus on TikTok, because that's where you're kind of gonna start getting more followers, and your audience is a bit wider. Okay, let's do that. But what she doesn't tell me is that TikTok has a shop. And the TikTok shop is...
TikTok had a shop.
Oh, no, it is a problem. It is a problem. So it's been a high for me because I've found this, and I've totally ordered a couple of things while I'm supposed to be promoting Higher House. I'm ordering stuff of the TikTok shop.
Chief social media
manager over here. So that was a high, and I was so excited. So watch this space. I will let you know what it's like, because I'm about the quality. So the stuff that I bought was really cheap, like cute little cardi, nice base, and I bought these kind of like chunky sandals. So I read the reviews before, like I think,
okay,
but 3 things for like a ridiculous amount of money. So
let's see the quality.
I don't know. And then low, I don't really have a low. It's been a pretty good week. So yeah.
That's amazing. I am all for weeks with no lows.
I am here for it, and long may they stay.
Let's get in today's episode. So I was doing a bit of research into what is the true definition of a toxic friendship and relationships just in general.
Yeah.
And there are quite a few different things that sort of hallmark a toxic friendship. But I think sort of like a recent thing that we can maybe think back to is if you've watched White Lotus.
New season, hey?
New season.
Thailand,
so
okay.
Season 3, Thailand, 4 Seasons Hotel in Thailand. It looks incredible. And there were the 3 ladies that had a very interesting friendship dynamic throughout the season.
It was actually quite scary to watch. That, look, I love White Lotus, and there's no like massive storyline, but there's so many small storylines.
Yes.
The female friendship storyline was so jarring for me, because I'm like, I can see myself and other people in every one of those characters that they played. And it was triggering because you see it from each one of their point of view at some stage, whatever the episode is. And you sometimes think, you're like, yeah, been in that position.
And both sides of the story.
And you've seen both sides, and you can totally relate, and you can justify the behavior of the characters, because you're like, okay, well, if I was in that position, maybe I would have done that, or maybe I wouldn't have done that. So yeah, that's probably one of the best descriptions of a toxic friendship.
Right
there it is.
So the actual sort of things that come out when we do the research is things like constant criticism, lack of empathy, constant negativity, and we all know how draining it can be around people that are constantly negative. Correct. Lack of support, as I said, empathy, comparison all the time.
Comparison is like the root of all evil.
Yeah,
and we all do it. We all compare.
Oh yeah, I think
and your friendships, in your friendships, depending, there is definitely comparison present.
Yeah, and a big one, imbalance of effort.
This is a question mark. So I was also kind of Googling and having a look, and there's so many different places where you can find these descriptions. The imbalance of effort is such an interesting one for me, because I think there's a fine line how people can view that as toxicity, or just not I don't want to say neediness, but kind of needing that constant validation, right?
Yeah.
Because I think if you feel that you are constantly needing that validation in forms of a friendship, maybe I'm not the best friend to be in that friendship with you, because I won't give that. That's just, maybe it's a weakness, but I won't give that. So that constant messaging, checking in, that's kind of not me.
That's not your type of friendship.
However, when you need me, I'm there, or when we are one-to-one, and I will give you all my attention, and I will focus my effort on you. So that's why I think it's difficult, because not everyone can be that messaging every day, checking in, and some people are like, well, I don't want to be. If that's what you're not going to do, then I'm not going to be in that friendship. So that's why I think that's quite an interesting one.
It is, and I also think imbalance of effort it's as you say, it is a fine line between those two things, because in some scenarios, it's actually you can't give 100% because of externalities, other things that are going on in your life.
Yeah.
And that's when, depending on the friendship, your friend gives a little bit more and you give a little bit less. But as long as, it's give and take.
Exactly.
Then I don't think it is toxic.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that give and take is quite important.
Exactly. Jealousy, playing two people against each other in manipulative behavior, lack of accountability. I mean, the list goes on and on.
The list goes on. It's a lot. And I mean, we literally even scratched the surface there. I do think, and I mean, when I was doing the research, when we were obviously chatting about putting the content together as well, I think it made me kind of think back, primary school, high school, early 20s. And I think at every stage in my life, I've been part of some form of toxic friendship. I was a toxic one, they were the toxic one, whatever the case was. And I think it takes some hindsight, and I think it takes you actually taking a step out of that particular relationship to be like, oh wow, this is actually really toxic. I mean, I remember growing up and being in this friendship circle where friends were pitted against each other, and it was, sometimes you were the favor of the week, or the favor of the day, or the favor of the month. I remember thinking to myself, like, if I wasn't the flavor of the day or the week, I was like, okay, well, what have I done wrong? No one likes me, like that insecure flavor. And then later on in my life as well, I think there were definitely times where I've been put in relationships or friendships where I've been manipulated to kind of, my feelings are always, on the back burner. So I'll end up doing things that I don't want to do, and I do them because I have to and I need to. And if I don't do them, I'm not going to make the other person happy.
Yeah.
And that breeds resentment as well. So it is crazy because you think to yourself, I think as women, you well, specifically me, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I think you specifically think like, oh, well, I have to do this.
Yeah.
I have to do this because it's the right thing to do, without thinking of your own feelings. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Well, you actually said something that you may have also been the toxic friend in situations. So do you actively see some of your own toxic behaviors sometimes in friendships that you've had?
Totally. I think manipulation is a very interesting topic. So manipulation is obviously one part of like why a toxic friend is a friend, right? I don't think anybody can say they've never had to manipulate a situation.
Oh, yeah.
Or manipulate a person. But I think the manipulation is, how is it serving you? Have I potentially been in a situation where I've manipulated the situation to benefit myself? Yes, I'll be honest. I think everyone has. Have I maybe been jealous at a stage, being in a friends group where certain individuals have better relationships, and I'm kind of like, what about me? And in turn that kind of lends me to maybe manipulating as well.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, geez, now that I think about it, I'm not a good friend.
No, but I think what's really important to remember when we talk about toxic friendships is it doesn't mean that the people are toxic.
Agreed.
So in a friendship, let's say you and I, if we had to have a toxic friendship, it doesn't mean that we're toxic people.
Yeah, it's just a relationship.
It just means that the relationship, the two people together, create something that doesn't bring out the best in each other. And I think the other part of this is that you can very easily be drawn into toxicity and you become the toxic friend.
Well, toxic feeds toxic, right?
Yes.
So, but if you think of like something so small as like mold, so random, but like a bad apple, there's that analogy, like one bad apple will spoil the entire apple cart. And it's actually so true, because if you've got an apple with mold, another apple gets moldy. So that like toxicity, if you're in a toxic situation or a toxic relationship, it's going to be toxic as well, you know? I think something else where, yes, could this be considered toxic? It was toxic because it kind of changed my behavior a bit, was in certain situations where I was Switzerland for a very, very long time growing up. Growing up, I was always Switzerland because I wanted to keep the peace. Definitely wanted to keep the peace. I wanted to be friends with everyone. I wanted to be liked by everyone. You know, that kind of that external validation. So what happens is that as opposed to choosing a side or standing on business or saying it with my chest, I wouldn't. And I just kind of stay in the middle.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to please everybody, because I always wanted to be liked. And that, I do think, I'm manipulating the whole situation. You know, I definitely do think that is a form of toxicity.
Yeah. And I think it's also one of those moments where you sit back and think back to the times where you have maybe behaved that way. But you can learn so much from it.
Yeah.
And see how you can change your behavior in other situations and be more confident and actually have an opinion. The opposite of that is not being confrontational and being difficult and being manipulative in the other sense.
Yeah.
It's just standing up for what you believe in, but you don't learn that. Well,
you don't.
People try and teach it to you, let's be fair.
Yeah, like they do.
But you only learn through doing. Really. I've always had like a much smaller group of friends, or just a small group of friends, but that doesn't mean that I haven't been the one that has created that negativity in a scenario.
Yeah.
I think many times I actually have. And
tell me why you say that.
Well, I think you just sometimes act out like really poorly. Like I remember deciding one day that I was done being friends with someone.
Why?
And I just walked away. I don't know. I can't remember the reason why. I literally can't remember the reason why. I think it's so bizarre. We're now friends again. But I can imagine how horrible that would have been for that person. And then I suddenly show up again and I'm like, okay, we're friends again.
Hi, surprise, surprise.
So it was very much on my terms, which is just so horrible to do.
Do you think, and you gain emotional maturity as you kind of, you know, the older you get, you kind of gain this emotional maturity. Do you think you were a bit like, well, it's my way or the highway? Or do you think you had maybe the emotional intelligence to deal with that type of situation? Why do you think it was just like, okay, well, we're not going to be friends?
Yeah, I'm sure it was the complete lack of emotional intelligence, which is something you certainly learn. And I don't think I've always necessarily been the most empathetic person in the world. That has certainly come with age.
I definitely do struggle with a bit of empathy. Like but I'm a bit of a closed book. I don't make friends very easily. Like, I don't know why. I just have like a bit of a hard exterior. So it takes me a long time. And maybe I don't have that empathy for people because I sometimes will look and be like, well, that makes no sense to me. Like, just get on with it, you know, or whatever the case is. It's changed, but I potentially have lacked empathy. But then when I'm your friend, I'm your friend and I'll do absolutely anything as well. And that is also quite toxic. You were saying that it's not a toxic person, it's a toxic behavior, and that is definitely quite a toxic behavior, which I'm trying.
And I think I've also definitely, as I said, I can't remember that particular scenario, like why I just cut it off. I was like, no, I'm done. And then I came back a while later. I'm like,
you're like, hi, I'm back.
But I do know that there have been examples of friendship in my life where if they didn't necessarily agree with something I've done or something I've said, then instead of dealing with it and, you know, having
a conversation
about it and maybe finding a middle ground or not finding a middle ground, but that's okay too. I would just be like, okay, well, then I'm done with that friendship. I'll move on, find somebody else. So
interesting.
And now, because of, I think, my learning around that, I'm a lot more purposeful about if there's tension in a relationship, I'm way more upfront about it and I'll just speak about it because I know that that's unhealthy.
I'm going to ask you like a question that we haven't really discussed, but do you think there are certain relationships that you recognize are toxic, but you still continue to be in? Like I said, this is not a question. We did not plan for this, but it's just something that I was like thinking about.
Maybe not, I wouldn't say like an actively toxic relationship or friendship.
Yeah.
But maybe a friendship that just we don't get equal parts out of it.
Okay.
Or maybe not even equal parts because that's not fair. It's not always going to be equal parts. But there are scenarios where I think I give a lot more than I get.
Okay.
And I don't know how
Do you feel-
sustainable that is.
Do you feel that when you're giving, so obviously giving, do you feel that that person is manipulating your behavior in order for you to give a lot? Because that's kind of the root of toxicity, right? Is that
Yeah.
manipulation piece?
I suppose, or they just don't care.
Yeah.
Or just don't really think about it. I don't know.
And you know, and can I be honest? Like, some people just don't care.
No.
Like, I don't even think they're thinking this deep.
Do you think you're in
So
friendships?
yeah, I think it's not just friend. It's any form of relationship.
Yeah, relationship
right?
in general.
Just
yeah.
relationship in general.
And that
think
can be family. It can be friends.
It can be family, relationship, friends, whatever. Hopefully, you're not in a toxic relationship with like your therapist or your partner. Like, otherwise, you need to think about that. I think yes, definitely. I think there are certain relationships that, in general, they're always they are always going to be fundamentally toxic. But you need to pick your battles, right? Pick your battles, and as long as but then that kind of leads it to, I guess, where we're going around boundaries and all of that. But I think yes, I don't think there's one person that can sit back and be like, oh, cut out all the toxicity in my life. No, there's always going to be an element of toxicity, and but it's about how you then handle it. It's about how you then let it affect you.
Oh yes.
I mean, going back to that story that I was telling you about, kind of this, growing up in this friendship group and having relationships being pitted against each other. I mean, I remember, and I was young, I remember being so upset the one time about there must have been like a bit of a falling out or whatever the issue is, and like, I'm so upset. If I do something to hurt myself, they'll actually feel guilty for me, and then they'll be so upset that they were ugly to me.
That's sort of the level that you would get to.
That's kind of the level that you're kind of getting to when you're in such like a toxic, there's no way out, but it's okay. If you hurt yourself, then, maybe
you could they'll feel affection.
Bad. Then you're going to buy their affection.
Yeah.
They're going to buy their affection. Yeah.
And how do you think you identify toxic friendships or relationships in your life?
It's not easy. It's not easy.
No.
It's not easy at all. I mean, look, I've been in toxic relationships, very, very toxic relationships. I actually think I actually literally had the most toxic exes. Friends would say to me, this is not right for you, like, you have to leave.
So friends are actually
so friends and
honest.
family, and they're saying this is really not nice, because I would speak to them and I'd say, this is how you treat, this is how you treated me. And they're like, what are you doing, Cara? Like, what are you doing? And I never got it. I absolutely never got it. And I mean, it took me a long time to get out of those toxic scenarios from a partner. It took me a really, really long time. And it was nothing, there was no physical hurt or it was nothing like that. It was just like the psychological mind games and the manipulation about the way I was. And I'd sometimes like look in the mirror and be like, who the hell is this person, like staring back at me, because they're manipulating me to such a point where I didn't even recognize the behavior that I'm doing. So to answer your question, I don't really know how do I identify toxic.
It's always easy in retrospect.
It's so much easier in retrospect, right? I think I was having a chat to a friend of mine, and we were talking about something quite different, but she mentioned peace, and she mentioned about feeling peace and wanting peace and being peaceful in whatever scenario, kind of building this life around you, with the idea of being peace and having peace. And I thought to myself, I was like, that's actually so smart, and that's quite a nice way to describe it, because relationships, friendship, partner-wise, you are choosing to be around these people, right? So they need to bring you peace. You have to feel peaceful. Life is, think of what's happening in the macro environment, like it's a lot of stress. So if those relationships are not bringing you peace, you need to take a deep, deep look at it.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. That kind
I think
of
there
peace
has
word.
to be some net positive.
There has to be a net
feeling
positive. Exactly.
Or fulfillment from a relationship. And I say net positive because it's not always going to be positive, but overall you should be with people, and when I say be, like friends and the people that you surround yourself should have a net positive
It should be something
benefit to your life.
Because we get, I don't know about you, but like I find I get my cup filled in so many different ways from so many different people,
Yes.
right? John is different. My friends,
Your
family, but even certain friendships. Like there's certain friends where you just need to, I don't know, you need like a pick me up, and you need them to fill your cup from a emotional perspective, because you know that you know they know you inside out, and you can really get deep with them. But then there's some friends where you just you don't want to get deep, and let's just go have some fun, and you know what I mean. And I think it's not all relationships are the same, toxic or non-toxic, but like those positive relationships, they don't have to all be the same, and you can get your cup filled from different things. But I think the peaceness and being able to have my cup filled in a way that serves me, because it's my relationship, you know, it's my relationship. So I'm not being selfish about the whole thing, but it's like,
well, you also give them something, so it's
exactly, you
benefit, a positive benefit overall, you know.
Yeah, I think that's how I'd identify it.
I also think you mentioned something really important, is your cup is filled by so many different people in so many different ways. I think it's quite negative if your cup is only being filled by a single person. That is a huge amount of onus on one person to fulfill every part of your happiness in your life. That is toxic.
That is toxic, but also other people should not be filling your happiness. Like happiness should not be based on...
No, that's true.
And what you've just said now, I'm like, I think there was a stage where my happiness was dependent on those around me and those friendships around me and how good they made me feel, and that validation.
Yeah.
If that's going to be the case, you're not going to be happy.
No, exactly. And something slightly different, but I think people can also use... I'm very honest with my friends. You know, I'm so honest. And actually, you can just sometimes be quite mean.
Yeah. What is the difference between being honest and being mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it has to do with delivery.
I think delivery is
very important.
Delivery is important.
But I think there is a very, like, you should not be, how do I put this? Like, it's not that you don't judge your friends' actions, maybe, but you should always be there for your friend irrespective of the actions.
It's about so judgment. So we how many episodes was it ago? I think it was our first episode. I was saying one of my favorite things about you is that you don't judge me as a person. And you were like, yeah, but I am quite judgy. You do not judge people, but you will be honest enough about judging your actions. And I think that's the key thing. It's not about judging your friends as who they are to, you know, as a core. If you're going to do that, you might as well not be friends with them.
Yeah.
But you should have a relationship where you can judge their actions, but call them out for their behavior. Yeah. Be honest without being mean.
Exactly. But I think maybe we're using the word judge incorrectly here. Like, I use it incorrectly because I say, I'm going to judge you for doing this. Because I don't agree with it. But that doesn't change my relationship with you. Like, I'll still love you for the person that you are. Which is obviously... I'm not talking about like murder. Like, don't murder anyone. I'm not going to
We do not condone murder on this podcast.
I'll probably not be your friend if you're murdering people and then you tell me about it.
I mean, listen.
I'm going to report you. Just putting it out there.
Same thing if you're stealing a whole bunch of money. Unless you're giving me the money, then we can chat.
And of course, the other thing is I'm expressing my feelings towards the situation based on my own morals and values. And if you don't share my morals and values, then what you're doing is, or not doing, is maybe not right or wrong for you. That's fine too. But I'm just letting you know that it doesn't sit right with me.
And it doesn't align with me. But then if you go back what you've just said about toxic before, think about Taryn however many years ago when that scenario happened where you were just like, okay, you're not agreeing with me. See you later.
Exactly.
But think about it now. You're going to, throughout the walks of life, you are going to find people that don't, they're going to do certain things that you don't agree with, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to be their mate.
Exactly. How do you think that you're in these toxic relationships or friendships or scenarios, and it can even be sort of workplace scenarios, colleagues, that sort of thing. How do you think you remove yourself from that scenario?
Are we asking me?
Asking you.
I mean, I'm like the worst person to answer. There has been countless times primary school, high school, etc., where I didn't do anything. And what would happen is that it's like when you're boiling potatoes.
It is?
It is. It is. It's like when you're boiling a potato to make a roast potato, because we love food on this. So you think about the pot of water. So you put a bit of pot of water in, and it's okay. Put your potatoes in, it bubbles. It's all happy. The more water you add, the more water you add, the more water you add. There's going to come a time where it's going to bubble over. Especially if that lid's on top as well. So if you're keeping everything down and it's kind of bubbling, something's going to happen. There's going to be some form of combustion. So my old Cara before Cara 2.0 arrived, I didn't do anything. I didn't do absolutely anything. And I was in relationships, work, friend, partner relationships for a long time, not doing anything and knowing how toxic they were. And then, like a pot, there would be a catalyst, there would be one thing, and then that would be me. I would be like, okay, right. And I would lose my shit in not a very nice way. Because I did not know how to deal. I knew these were bad situations. I knew I was being manipulated. I was being compared against. There was constant negativity. So they were completely so toxic, but I didn't know how to get out of it. I was recognizing it. My behavior was changing, but I just did not know how to get into it. Potentially, we should have started putting in some boundaries, but Kari did not know what a boundary was. So she didn't. And that leads us to boundaries.
Our next episode. Boundaries are the thing that is probably going to get us through that. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for listening. Any comments, let us know.
Tell us about your toxic friendships.
Tell us about your toxic
friendships.
Tell us
the most unhinged toxic friendships you've ever been in.
And you can completely keep it anonymous. We want to know. I just want to know that I'm not the only one that's been in unhinged toxic friendships and relationships, please.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much,
guys.
and please like, subscribe, follow, and
do all the
leave
things.
some comments.
Leave comments.
Bye.
Bye.